are live in Studio B with your day-to-day BYU Sports play-by-play. I am Spencer Linton. That is Jerem Jordan. Across the way from us now is former BYU basketball sharpshooter and basketball analyst Jonathan Tavernari. Back on the show, JT. How you feeling this morning? On commencement day, no less.
Graduation day. You remember graduation day?
I do, yeah. Yeah, it was, you wear your Harry Potter garb and you get a piece of paper. It's pretty awesome.
The old Marriott Center, right? So you remember where the locker room was? I just didn't want to stay in line to get my name called. So I just told someone, I said, here's my phone number. Text when it was my turn. And me and Lamont Morgan went to the locker room to play video games. And then we're there for like 20 minutes. And then finally got a text and I'd say, hey, we're up. And then we just closed the door, went back online, and yeah.
That's a proper workaround.
Chestnut checkers.
Let's go.
Yeah.
You're dressed to work out here. That's what you're doing in a minute.
Yeah, just it's spring time, and excited to be working with the guys again. Just got done doing some stuff with a few of the guys, and I like it. It's exciting time, and I appreciate the access that the coaches give me, that the administration give me, and it's how I give it back. I feel like BYU has given me a ton, and the least I can do is, in the summertime when coaches aren't allowed because there's still some type of rules around college basketball, and and there's only amount of time that they can be together. And so the times that they can, I come in and I work the guys out and help with their shooting and all of that. So it's that time of the year. That's why I'm like this.
Let's go.
So
looking good. In the spirit of graduation, 4 BYU players are moving on. We would love to have them all back. That is not the reality.
Yeah.
But many BYU fans are also wondering if guys who do have eligibility can come back, led by Richie Saunders, is what we're talking about on the show today. So, Jonathan, from your perspective and with your access to Richie, how do you feel straight up? Do you feel like he's going to be back at BYU next season?
So I will say this. What I would do if I was Richie, it was probably test the waters, right? He didn't enter the portal, which is, it's a first step. But I would probably, if I were him, I would test the waters and in terms of the NBA draft, right? And then from there, make a decision. Now you have a little bit more leeway and timing to be able to go into draft and come back and, how do you want to do it? Do you want to stay? Do you want to come back? And so, in my opinion, that's what Richie is probably going to do, and that's what I would do.
How much can he better his stock with another senior season where, let's say he does what he did last year, which was incredible. Is he a second-round guy in the NBA? Is he a late first?
Yeah,
Is he undrafted?
It's an interesting perspective. Like the last time I was on the show, I said, hey, I think Jaeger may come back. But that's because of everything he was saying, going to conference and all of these things. But the original plan for Jaeger was always for him to go, right? As you also look at Jaeger, and maybe this can even be relevant to Richie, is what can he do, to your point about his stock? What can he do to improve that? I mean, Richie was first team all Big 12. We're talking about a borderline or all-American season. So how does he improve that stock? It's not an easy ask, right? Now, when you compare it to Jaeger, Jaeger would have to be all first team Big 12, lead the Big 12 in assist, be an All-American, get BYU to the Elite Eight.
Limit turnovers, shoot better three. He did a lot good stuff. There's a couple of spots he could improve.
And so as I look at that, you can argue either way, which, Richie should probably stay in the draft because what he has to top based on last year, it is a mountain to climb, right? But then you talk about, well, is he going to be, a two-way player, a G League player, and then the NIL comes into discussion, right? Where can he earn more? Is it at BYU through NIL, or is it, at the professional rankings? And so
that's an easy answer if he's a two-way guy.
Right.
It's NIL in college.
Very
Not
simple answer.
Yep.
And so I think those are the things that you have to weigh, right? In Jaeger's factor, he is still talked about as a top 20 guy, right? And so the decision there is not complicated because he most likely will be drafted in the first round. With Richie is, if I'm not drafted, even in the second round, I'm a two-way player. I have to fight for a G League spot.
No guarantee. Yep.
And so those are the things that as these guys are weighing the options, that's from a player that when I played, if I were playing in this day and age, that's what would go through my head. So I guarantee that's what they're weighing.
Does he need to, declare and get a shot at? We don't even know if he'd get to the NBA Combine, for example.
Yeah.
Can he get that feedback without even being an early entry guy to know, like, oh, I wouldn't even be close to the first round, therefore I'll just come back?
Yeah.
Or does he need to declare and kind of do that process?
That's a good point. Things change so much with the NBA world, right? Can he get to workouts? And, obviously it's interesting, having a head coach that it's, arguably.
Is he enough feedback?
And that's my
from
point,
all his
right?
GM buddies.
Can he get enough feedback from Kevin's connections in the NBA with all the assistant coaches? Hey, this is what you need to do. But then there's also the fact, like, I'm not saying, Kevin Young is going to do this, but Richie, nobody likes you. You definitely need to come back, right? Kevin Young is not going to do that.
Right.
But
his integrity is way too high.
Well, but that's but the point is, he's in a very unique situation, and I think that's what having the NBA level, the pro level coaching staff that does it as well. Maybe Richie doesn't even need to go work out for a team, right? I mean, we don't know what's going to happen because he already has that feedback from the connections that the coaching staff have, and not just Kevin Young, Will Voigt, Tim Fanning, even Jordan was,
Jordan Brady.
Yeah, Jordan Brady.
Yep.
I remember when he was at UVU and we were about the same class, and then he went and played. He worked at the D League back then, and so he has multiple people that can give him a lot of feedbacks. And so I think Richie's in a great spot, right? Because he has a great feedback. He goes to the NBA, starts his pro career, or he comes back to a place where he is idolized, and loved and cherished, and gets to make a lot of money through NIL. And have a fantastic senior year, playing with the #1 player in the country next year.
And baking sheets are flying off the shelves for him as well.
Get them while they're hot. No
Nice.
pun intended.
Nice.
What is your guys' favorite way to have tater tots?
Crispy and delicious.
Yeah,
with
that.
fry
Any
sauce.
toppings? Any cheese?
Yeah,
like with
some
maybe
cheese,
some ground beef or something like that?
Loaded tots.
Yeah, loaded tots.
Nacho cheese on them.
That all sounds good. We're getting
All right.
closer to lunchtime.
Okay.
Great. Now we're hungry.
Some chives on there.
Okay.
Jonathan Tavernari is on BYU Sports Nation. All right, with Richie in flux, we do know about a couple of guys who have officially joined BYU. Dominic Diamande and Robert Wright III, the transfer guard from Baylor. So I know that Richie's a huge question mark out there and a huge part of what BYU could be, but with those two in play, JT, what do you make of BYU basketball and what they're capable of with those two specific additions?
Well, and listen, let's also not forget AJ. But I get where you're going with the question. I totally get it. But that's a story in its own.
Sure.
But I'm very intrigued to see Diamande in the summer. I'm very interested because redshirted, didn't play, but the highlights look incredible.
Long, athletic, wing.
Very much so. Again, right, an international guy. I love his story. All love, to Mawat Mag. But it's almost like in 2 or 3 years, he could be an upgrade from what Mawat, was to BYU last year in terms of a 3-and-D guy that can develop, and have NBA chances, aspirations, and so on. With Robert Wright, I was here. I worked the Baylor game with you guys. In the overtime, we kept talking here. He took over.
14 straight points.
At the end of regulation and overtime, with all respect to VJ, who is a top 5 pick, who took over the game was Robert Wright. It wasn't VJ. VJ ended up with 27, 28 points, but Robert Wright had 22. And at the end of the game, we remember talking about they kept going to whoever Mag wasn't guarding. They were looking for the mismatch, and most of the time was Robert Wright. And so he is the type of point guard that I don't think BYU has ever had, in terms of quick and athletic, and he can get to the rim. He's bouncy. He's got a great shot, great ability, and, has played with AJ before. And so I think there's a lot of different looks that BYU is going to be able to get. And the #1 thing for the last couple of years that BYU has struggled a little bit is guard play on defense, right? Because the Big 12, as we know it, Texas Tech, Houston, those guys, Baylor before, they're loaded on the guard front, right? Houston game and then Texas Tech in a tournament, it was just up and down, and those guys are super physical. And so Robert Wright is yet another dimension of a player that BYU has never had.
Which is very exciting. We do need to ask you about your old teammate, Jimmer Fredette, announcing his retirement from basketball. The basketball world celebrated him What are some stories and memories you have from playing with Jimmer?
So, my number one thing I would say about Jimmer is from the very first time he came on his visit, I remember talking to his mom because Kay is not a member of the church, and I was Catholic. So I remember her and she saw my cross necklace, and we talked about that. But there's just so many things, like the first night he was on campus. Me and Mike Lloyd were coming through to go to the dorms, like, Jimmer, let's go to this party, let's go hang out. And he is in sweats with socks over his pants. He's like, I'm just going to play some video games and play on my computer, and then I'm going to go to bed, right? The one thing that Coach Rose said, I think in the show yesterday or the day before, Jimmer, much like I've shared before about Richie working out in the summer, Jimmer was good in high school, but he wasn't that good. Like, he was a solid player, but the way that he developed year after year after year, working with his uncle Taft and just developing, and his sheer will of improving over and over again, that is the ultimate, example for kids everywhere, right? And through it all, he stayed the same type of guy, same type of jokes, humble. Obviously, the basketball world knows him, right? But the same type of guy. When he's around us, he is the same. And unbelievable career. I got to play with him for 3 years. I wasn't part of Jimmer Mania, didn't get a chance to be a part of that team. That would have been great. But he's an amazing guy. Whitney and his family are amazing. His dad, Al, his brother, his family. The Fredette family is amazing. What an amazing career he had.
JT, good to have you on the show, man.
Appreciate it, man.
Always good to see
Always
you.
Appreciate talking ball.
I'm kind of hungry now. So
After talking about
I'm
tots,
kind of hungry now, and so we got to go to lunch sometime soon.
Let's go.
Maybe Tucanos had tater tots. I don't know.
Let's go. Well, I don't think they do, but they
They got other stuff.
They got other
That's
stuff.
also delicious.
Yeah.
JT, thanks for the time.
Thanks
man.
for having me.